Hi guys, this is Pooja and I'm at a book by the window. I get a lot of comments saying, "Oh, do you only read English books? Do you not read books from Indian literature?" But you and I both know that isn't true. I do enjoy reading my fair share of Indian literature, and as a matter of fact, I find it more diverse than other forms of literature at times, solely because India as a country is so varied in its experience from north to south, from east to west. There are so many cultures, so much diversity, food, language, and ever since I started dabbling more into it, I have never gone back. So before getting into the video, I would like to just talk a bit about my interest with Indian literature and how I came to love it so much. Growing up, I was a very bright literature student. I would love reading about stories, so much so that even before my course was supposed to start, I would run out of all the literature books, all the stories. So we would have like English and Hindi, and under each of them, because I was from an ICSE school up until my high school, we would have like 3 books just for one language. Like there'd be a poetry book, there'd be a story book, and then there'd be like an epic. Like I remember I read Julius Caesar, and similarly for Hindi. So I used to enjoy reading them so much, and because we also had a teacher who would explain us what those stories mean and what symbolism each paragraph has for it, it was when my love for reading at the root level and Hindi also just was cultivated. When I moved to a different school in my +2, I was focusing more on competitive exam, physics, chemistry, maths. So reading in Hindi kind of got off the bandwagon. But when a few years into Bookstagram, I found a whole plethora and creators recommending Indian books, and I could not wrap my head around how I have missed out on so many good books. And now that I have a bit experience in the field, a veteran, you can say, I have a list of few books on Indian literature that I have read and liked. So today I would like to recommend them to you. So without further ado, let's get into the list. I made a list of like 7 books with varied experiences from different regions of India. Some of them are translated. I read them in English because I don't understand some of these languages, but there are some in Hindi. If you are a Hindi speaker, you can read them. Even if you are not, you can just dive into them just to get like a different perspective in your home country, which always baffles my mind. So yeah, here is the list. The very first book on the list, without a doubt, has to be Godan by Munshi Premchand. Munshi Premchand is a very renowned, very popular, famous author of his time, and his epics got carried over time and time. So Godan is one of that epic that is a pillar of Hindi literature, and I cannot complete this list without mentioning it. So Godan is a story about a family of farmers, and at that point, what is the socioeconomic condition, what are the pains, and it is just a description of the pain and the suffering a normal farmer or a human goes through around that time. And there are characters that play their role in their life, and they play a role in this epic. Definitely, this is in Hindi, and it is very core Hindi. So if I doubted there is a translated work on it, although there are going to be English translation of this book here and there. So if you can find your hands on it, if you don't read Hindi, you can do that. Otherwise, I would highly recommend reading this one. The second book on the list is Bahut Dur Kitna Dur Hota Hai by Manav Kaul. Again, this is a book in Hindi. Its literal translation is "How far is too far," and this in itself, like Manav Kaul is a writer who writes about everyday thing in a very beautiful manner. It's all about the prose and his daily observations. I read this book. It was one of those first books that I read when I wanted to get back into just reading Hindi, and I loved the experience. For it talks about his travels around Europe and what he observed, and slow traveling, slow living, just having a coffee in a cafe, not being very concerned about where money is coming to come from, where his dreams are going, where his life is going, which is his whole character. He embodies those personality traits, and just reading it wanted to make me just fly to Europe, make a trip for myself. Now that I live in London, it just feels like I've come a full circle. And there are places in the book that he mentions where other writers have lived their lives. I have not been able to go there, but it is one of my living dream to walk the streets where these writers walked once. I don't know when that is going to happen, but definitely a book that took me with it and brought my love for just reading Hindi back again. The third book on the list is One Part Woman by Perimal Murugan. Now, this is a translated piece of work, originally written in Tamil. It is a very hard-hitting but totally believable story. In India, the social aspect governs so much of your life. It doesn't go unnoticed, and we often hear stories that strike us as unbelievable, but they are totally believable because we live in a society that emphasizes pride over individual flaws. And this is a story about a couple who are trying to conceive but haven't been able to do so for 12 years, their tryst, and how they are treated in the society. And one night, just what happens in a festival, the ending is very striking too. It's sad, it's heartbreaking, but I would highly recommend everyone read this. Also because northern culture is different from the southern culture, and yet the problems are the same in a different language. I would say just go and get this book for yourself. The fourth book on the list is Ghachar Kochar by Vivek Shambang. This is originally written in Kannada and it's translated. I read it in English again, and I was in Bangalore, so how can I not read Kannada literature? It's a very interesting book. It is thrilling. It is a short read. It is very crisp, and there are twists and turns, and also just a Bangalore house, the food, the mornings, the again socioeconomic condition, the roles of a man and woman in the society. They are all the same, but with a different air. And the ending is also pretty nice. Very short, crisp book, under like 150 pages. And if you can get your hands on it, just do it ASAP. The fifth book has got to be Shantaram by Gregory David Roberts. A lot of people would have already heard about this book, but this is a book that I read many years ago, like even before I was on Bookstagram, and someone recommended it to me. It is a very thick book. It is, I think, 1200 pages thick. I think I wasn't ready to read it that time around, but then I did read it, and it just stuck with me so far. It is an epic about a convict who has fled from Australian prison, and he finds himself in Bombay around the time there are drug lords, and around the time of the bomb blast. And it takes you through a Mumbai that is just rising up, and a crime, and he wants to disappear and not be found. And he deals with substance abuse, and all his demons just carry him around his whole life, and how he gets out of them. It's a story to marvel at. It is such a motivating read. It just brings all the flaws of a human character on the surface. So why would you not wanna get your hands on it? I understand it's very thick, but it's an experience in itself. I highly recommend. The sixth book on the list is The Aunt Who Wouldn't Die by Shishendu Mukhopadhyay. This is another translated book, translated from Bengali. It's very interesting. It is small, but it's very interesting in the sense that it takes you along three generations. There are three generations of women living in a house, which so happen in India, joint families live together under the same roof, and generations of people have been living there. And this new bride enters into this house, and she's all set to become the devout wife as is expected of her. But what she does not know, that there is an aunt, her aunt-in-law lives there, and she's a ghost. So the story is very funny at times, but also strikes back home, because a lot of these emotions you would have seen with your mom or a generation above you, your aunts making snide remarks and gossiping, and just this tight-knit family structure which you cannot escape, just even if you want to. But it's still fun to read, and it has a nice ending to it too. So I would recommend that too. Like that, we're at the end of the list. The last book on the list is The Midnight Children by Salman Rushdie. You cannot go wrong with Salman Rushdie. You cannot complete a list of books like this without mentioning this author. And The Midnight Children is a story that sets itself at the time of partition, when India and Pakistan are just separating. And it's a fictional story. It has elements of magical realism in it. The main character has some telepathic powers with other children that have been separated, so they all are called Midnight Children, and it takes you along post-colonial Delhi and parts of Lahore, Pakistan, how that's connected. It's also a very thick book. It's primarily written in English, but it's an experience to take with you. The thing that I like about Indian books is that they would have so many layers to them, just based on where they are set, and then they'd have layers of intricacies around the food, the crime, the streets, the language, the weather. That is different, but at the crux, at the core of it, we all have similar ideas, because we have been living like this forever, right? So that is the list. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video as much as I enjoyed making it, and that got me thinking there are so many other books I want to mention. Maybe I make a part 2 of this, but let me know in the comments below what are the books on Indian literature you have read or you would like to read, so that we can have this whole community of people just reading Indian books, right? I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.